Smart 24, Driving Business.
Thank you so much for joining us once again for another segment on The Point. My name is Anthony Sebali. Thank you so much, those of you on our social media. We've seen the comments, very, very interesting. Thank you for following the matters here. We'll be responding to some of the questions if probably time gets to allow. But let's continue with our discussion here. When we went into the break, Mr. Ronald has just justified why probably women are not getting the big projects. And Ms. Charity had concerns with that. And I want to bring you back here on the issues that were raised by Mr. Ronald. He says that sometimes women don't take risks. Sometimes women actually are in these businesses that he mentioned, the tailoring, beautification, and they're not into the big projects. But then also, he talked about the fact that women are probably not interested in the big documents. They don't want to get down to do the hard work of getting to understand what's being written down in the bids. And men take over these things because they overshadow the women in terms of taking the risks and getting the hard blows. Would you side with these arguments, or they're actually not sufficient to support what he's saying?
Of course, I don't side with his arguments. I think they're very biased. To be very honest, I think they are very biased. I think women have not been given the opportunity to actually prove their worth. We have seen it. I will give an example of our political space. We have seen the NRM government coming out and saying we are going to promote women's participation in the political spaces. This is just an example. And they have done it. We know that we have from number 2 to around, we have big shots between number 1 and 5 of this country. The majority are women. So this is what we are saying to PPDA, Ministry of Finance, and responsible authorities, that it is time to think about solutions of having inclusiveness, going beyond or looking into other studies that we have done that have not been specifically on looking at barriers of women. We have done an analysis of data on procurement across Africa. We find that inclusiveness is still a very big problem. Inclusiveness goes to women, the special groups, and also it goes to what Ronnie manages, the local content, that is the foreign vis-a-vis the local-owned companies. You find that even when we have a policy framework for promoting local content, you will find that still the big contracts are going to foreign companies. The local companies are getting services. For example, if it is a construction of the road, do you know what the local companies are getting? Sweeping the road being constructed,
and waving the flags,
supplying food at the company. No, that's not what we want. You get it? Ronnie can come back and say, look, it's because you don't have the capacity. How am I going to get the capacity when my government has neglected me? We are hearing about, okay, there is the Myoga, there is the PDM. So, yes, there is the PDM, but how should it benefit the citizens of Uganda? They're giving 1 million. But can we have, for example, a financial scheme that when a company has the rightful documents or the processes, can be supported, for example, given security? I am not a business person, but I know that you need to provide some sort of security to win a bid. Can we have financial institutions back these local companies? Can government get into agreement with these financial institutions and back its citizens? We have had stories, I don't have proof of this, that when a Chinese wins a contract in an African country, the Chinese government is going to support its citizen to get a loan to finance that job. So can the government of Uganda, can the Ministry of Finance think about these schemes? Can the PPDA table such issues and say, how can we bring our local companies to participate? Because you see, when I am doing a road in my own village, I cannot play around with it because it will come back to me. I'm going to use the same.
Yeah.
So there's that bit of ownership. There is that bit of participation. I will be of value. Patriotism. Then everyone around me is going to benefit from it. But you can't talk about fighting corruption fighting unemployment when the biggest monies are being taken back outside this country. So it is the same with the women. Ronnie just said that yes, these provisions are there, the women don't want to take risks and maybe juggle money to service this contract and the other. Naturally, it's true, women are not risk takers. But the society has also pushed us as women to keep low and do businesses which we feel secure with, or do operations that we can actually manage and keep around, or do the roles or the jobs that we have learned from our mothers, like tailoring, like beautifying the house. It is a social and a gender role, so we are grading it into business. So the construction, I know many engineers, I know many doctors, I know many electricians who are women. So it is the government coming out. I have been around, I promote access to information, but I also didn't know the special schemes that are under Ministry of Gender. It's a shame that I didn't know. So what about my mother in the village? My mother is still young, she's not 70, so she can still do business. What about the woman who comes to my house to help me with cleaning? So she cannot know. So we have been left, society has set us in a way that our job is to sell vegetables by the road because maybe our friends or from our savings we can get 2 million shillings and put up a vegetable store. So now this is the time when government needs to come out, disclose the information as a way of promoting participation. Of course, you have to create a good policy environment, an enabling environment, define what you mean by women participating in business, in public procurement. Talk about these reservation schemes, exactly what is in for them, and also provide specific and clear guidelines of what is required with them. I took a read, I'm going to give an example. I read through the special scheme that is under UDB. When I look at the share capital or the minimum money that someone has to have, they're talking about 50 million, they're talking about 500 million, they're talking about 50 million. So they are still categorizing these women groups into SMEs and micro and businesses. For heaven's sake, I don't know how many women have 500 million shillings reserved on their accounts or have property worth that amount. So it is going to still remain in the few hands of the few women enterprises. And also, there is also a need to take note of also the beneficial ownership. We have so many companies whose face is a woman, but actually the decision makers is some bearded person behind it and is the one benefiting from this. So to respond directly to Ronnie, it's not that women fear the risk. They have not been given the platform to exercise their potential, but they have the potential and the interest to do this. Share the information, disclose it. From other analysis that not necessarily on this, we see that disclosure of public information is still a challenge in our country. Even when you ask for the information, denial rates are very high. So if you don't share this information, if you don't create awareness, And yet we have a constitution that provides for this process. We know that, for example, Article 38 allows every citizen to participate. So how do you expect me to participate in government processes when you're not even facilitating me to participate? So I think it is high time that government needs to focus on the largest population, which is the women, and empower them. That way, we are going to develop, we are going to improve ourselves, and we are going to be included, meaning you are not going to leave us behind. And we shall also be achieving our agenda. Is it 2040?
Vision 2040.
Vision,
And then
and Vision 2040, and then the SDG agenda 2030.
Yeah.
So I think it is high time that actually the government, and lucky enough, we have the Eastern Procurement Forum happening this week.
Oh, wow, tell us about that.
Yeah.
What's in there?
I will not tell you about it. The authority is here to tell you more about it.
Okay.
But I think this is also another opportunity where the legislators are here to learn from one another, to discuss these issues and see how do they promote good procurement practices within the East African community. We have a good practice that is happening in our neighborhood, the AGPO. In Kenya, I think Uganda needs to learn from it. I think it's a very good practice. It has its few challenges, but I think since Kenyans are our brothers, we learn a lot from them and we teach them a lot. So I think it is high time that we learned from them and implemented this. And share this information. I wish that every woman can get this information and be able to better themselves. I learned that actually it does not have to be a single women's company. You can have joint ventures. The women will not know that until you share that information.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Madam Charity. Mr. Ronald, there we want your response first of all on women's involvement and what should be expected of them. Madam Charity has just made it clear that they have the potential, they can take the risk, but they haven't been given a chance to. But also, in case you've seen any loopholes, how can they position themselves? And you can also tell us about the forum that's coming up.
Okay, thank you, Anthony, and the viewers out there, and Charity. Perhaps let me start with the East African Procurement Forum. And this is a forum that brings together all the East African countries to discuss and deliberate and contrast and compare the different procurement systems and structures within the region. And most importantly, we also deliberate on how it is that we can strengthen and integrate as a region to ensure that we have larger markets, that we have better responses for bids in procurement, where people from across the region can respond, but also the private sector, the entrepreneurs and the business people are able to tap into these resources from this very huge market that brings together all the East African countries, Uganda including, I think, or inclusive. We are, I think, 7 countries. So the East African Procurement Forum is going to be running starting tomorrow, and it will also run on 24th, that is on Friday, and it's going to be at Sheraton. For those that may not be there physically, we will also be live streaming, and the live stream will be shared. We will make sure we leave the details here with Anthony so that he can perhaps aid and communicate. But on all our social media handles, we have included the links and a lot of information about the East African Procurement Forum. It is exciting because it brings together the public procurement regulators of these different East African countries. So back to the discussion. I think I want to not exactly agree that government of Uganda has neglected women. I think far from it, especially on matters of public procurement. We recognize the importance of women in the economy, and even down to the smallest unit, which is the family. Many times the livelihood and the people that keep families functional are actually women, you know. And many times you will realize that without the consistent support of a woman, many times families will crumble. So just like Charity talked about the political space and how it has progressively expanded. You know, today we have a prime minister, we have a vice president, we have all these ministers, we have the right honorable speaker. When you compare many years ago, 1985, 1986, 1990, we did not have the same equivalence of presence of women, you know. So this is a government of progression and progress. When you look at procurement reform, procurement has come from far in this country. Before 2003, procurement was done by accountants in this country and people in finance. So we had bundled finance and procurement under the same law, and we were doing it under the same function, and we had overwhelmed accountants and people in finance. Procurement was centralized for that matter. But today, when you look at how we have progressed, when you look at the ratio of people managing procurement in terms of gender, you'll find that it's almost an equal ratio. We have so many procurement officers who are responsible for award of contracts, for evaluation and assessment of these requirements. So when someone is hardening a process, chances out of 10 are 5 that person who is making the process complex is a woman. Charity here talked of sexualizing contracts. We have also had men saying that women are bothering us in these government institutions. But anyway, that is not a very serious point. But my point here is that women have actually taken up the space in the procurement processes and the procurement structures. Now, when you look at how we are progressing, we are trying to also learn from our countries around the region. You talked of AGPO, Charity. We have studied AGPO. We have studied the Black Economic Empowerment Policy of South Africa. These policies, to a certain extent, are good and well-intentioned, but they have their shortcomings. AGPO itself, to what extent is it functional? You know, if you assess its functionality, there are some things that we have studied, and we do not want to just copy and paste here. We want something that is going to work for the Ugandan women entrepreneurs here, you know. We are attempting to define a woman-led business, and we are saying that this should be one that is led, that is operated on a day-to-day basis by women, at least one or more women. It may have some youth in there, it may have some men in there, and all other sorts of groups of people, but if the leadership, if the control and operation of that organization is championed by women who have the mastery and the control over the resources, they can make decisions, then our definition is going in that direction. But when you study, perhaps we have not had a chance to share with you some of these drafts, which we must do. You will definitely see that this is a progressive journey, you know. We do not want to give away too much and risk government entities, risk accounting officers, because when we are talking of principles of public procurement and we are talking about effectiveness and efficiency, every time I put out a contract there and I have reserved it and people are not able to participate, I have set it aside for women or for locals, and they are not able to give me bids that are consistent with this requirement for one reason or another, the process is going to take longer. And it will, if a process was going to take me 1 month, you will find that I've taken 3 months. If it was a longer process that was going to take me maybe 2 months, you'll find that I've taken 4 months, because I have to now come back, remove the reservation, or reorganize the bidding documents, get new approvals, and then go back to the market. So we are trading carefully, but we also are very cognizant of the importance and the role that women play in this economy. When you look at businesses and how people are running the economy, you'll find a very heavy hand of women in this country and in their contribution towards our economic development and growth. So you cannot underscore such a movement and such a group of persons in terms of how much they are able to contribute. When you talk of resilience and consistency, women businesses are more resilient, they are more consistent. If it comes to financial discipline, we have seen to it that women-led businesses are more financially disciplined than the other gender, if I must say. You know, when you look around, people who are giving government headache and not completing their contracts, you will find that it is more men-led businesses, you know, because somehow the men will want to think that, well, this is a small project, after it I'm moving on to the next. This can wait, I can juggle here. So eventually you'll find that it's more men that are incarcerated in Luzira. You'll find that it's more men that we have blacklisted, not to deal with government any further. So we cannot underscore the importance of women-led businesses, but on the other hand, we must tread carefully to ensure that we are not trampeding effectiveness, efficiency. But government is also going to, I think, some of the quick wins and takeaways is to create partnerships with women-led businesses to see where they can put them to easily learn and easily pick. If we think projects are complex, what percentage of that scope can you give the woman-led business for them to do 1 or 2, 3 projects, and then on the 4th time they can take it up as their own?
And that's where she brought even the issue of the credit.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes.
The women businesses that you say most of them are informal, but also the issue of the credit.
Yes.
Isn't the threshold too high? I don't know if the 500 million is what is currently being taken into account. But how about that credit part? How are you going to be able to grow their businesses maybe to that level, or lower the threshold, at least to have more participation of women-led businesses?
I think in our thinking, for starters, we want to have a specific threshold or a starting point where we can say that come rain, come sunshine, women are going to be guaranteed this percentage or this threshold of business. So if there are women who are in a certain sector, and we have said maybe contracts within 300 million in government must be given to women-led business. That's an example. It's not what it is that we are putting down. If we have put up that kind of figure, then it will mean that all contracts in that sector below and within that threshold are actually going to be accorded to women-led businesses, you know. So we are thinking of that, and we are consulting very closely and very carefully with the Ministry of Finance and women-led associations and advocacy groups for women to ensure that that as a starting point is guaranteed in this instrument, so that when it's published, people know, just as it is currently for local providers. You know, if you're a Ugandan contractor or a road contractor, we know that anything below a certain threshold is reserved for Ugandan contractors. If it's within the road sector, anything below 45 billion shillings has to go to the Ugandans. And if it's any other form of construction, it should be anything below 10 billion shillings, you know. And so the requirement is simple, that if any business outside that bracket is not going to be managed by a Ugandan for any reason, including capacity and financial resources and equipment, then 30% of it should be subcontracted to Ugandans, either one or two or more Ugandans, so that we see that 30% of the scope and the value goes to Ugandans and does not go out. But it is also used as a learning experience, so that in future these groups of Ugandans can be able to, on their own, also bid for complex projects. And this is the same idea we want to also engage with women-led businesses. For areas and sectors that are huge, that we are not seeing them, we are going to say, can a certain percentage of this contract in terms of scope be given to the women? And of course, if a woman-led business has done one or two of those projects under subcontracting, eventually they can take it on their own and do the business on their own. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Tumahiri, for those wonderful responses. We have to take our last break and come back with our final segment. And when we return, we want to talk about the life cycle costing. And we want to see, besides the fact that we purchase, government purchases on behalf of the public, and then after use, we probably sell off because we have that disposal part as well. What takes so long for derelict assets like vehicles that we see at police, in the parking yards of Parliament and other government institutions? What takes so long? And we're losing a lot of value in this line. And of course, this is so important, not only for government, but for any individual. As you maintain an asset, it should give you more value. And if it's not, then you sell it off and get into something else. So what takes us so long? Also, we shall have to see some of the comments here in the on our YouTube channel and respond to some of the questions.
Sure.
I've seen Mr. Regan Howard there, Rose Sophia, and so many others that have been following. Thank you so much. We are returning shortly. Stay with us.